Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Just Bros podcast, where we share physical therapists and engineers' perspective on outdoor life, our field of expertise, and anything Just Bros want to discuss. Welcome back, folks. I just wanted to start this off with a quick tip for those of you that don't know already. You can subscribe and listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, YouTube as well. Links are going to be available wherever you found this originally. But with Apple Podcasts and Spotify, it's super easy to watch or listen on the go. You can get downloaded to your phone. If you hook your phone up to your car, you can listen to us BS on our way to work. If you didn't know, now you know. So today we are going to chat a little bit about Andrew's, what I'm going to call rifle dilemma, and a little bit about Husker football. But to start things off, how was your day, bro?
It was great. I got up, worked out, made breakfast, saw a patient in Gillette, saw some patients in Sundance, saw some patients back in Gillette, and we had spaghetti for dinner. And because my 3-year-old ate all of his spaghetti, I was able to unlock the Oreo shake blender, Oreos and ice cream combination. And so we did that, and it's always a good day when you get an Oreo shake, let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can recommend dropping some peanut butter in there sometime. Pretty good.
Yeah, I've had one of those in Lincoln. It's fantastic. How's your day?
It was pretty good. It was a Monday, but then we had some friends over for burger night, where I made smash burgers out on the griddle, and we hung out for a little while and got the kids to bed, and there I am.
I like your hat.
Thanks, man.
That was a fun little trip we had.
Yeah, it was. I do like this hat.
Well, let's see here. My rifle situation.
Yeah, so I called it your rifle dilemma because you've been talking to me about what you want to do with your hunting rifle situation. Like this hat.
Well, let's see here. My rifle situation.
Yeah, so I called it your rifle dilemma because you've been talking to me about what you want to do with your hunting rifle situation for a long time. Maybe not a year, but
it may be part of the reason why we even started this podcast in the get-go is I kept asking questions about how to build a gun, what guns are better, why this gun, why that, and I'd go into the store and I'd ask you questions. I'd talk to you on the way home from a long drive from Sundance or Newcastle and have an hour to BS with you about what I want to do with my guns. And so I guess all this is kind of two things happened in the last year. I realized that my favorite gun that I own for a rifle anyways is a heavy, more bench gun that you don't really want to take out in the mountains. And my Bergara B14 HMR, and it's an awesome shooter. It's a 1,000-yard gun easy. Done it multiple days. Had a lot of fun getting out there, but just not wanting to hunt with it. And then I have a 300 Win Mag that's on the other side of things, probably a little too light, and something that I don't really enjoy shooting, to be quite honest. I don't do a good job following my impact, so I'm trying to figure out what's that in between. Maybe I go build something. Maybe I buy a higher end gun. Maybe I get something with carbon fiber, trying to get all this stuff. And throughout all of this, I didn't even elk hunt with my rifle last year because I got one with my bow. So, I mean, ideally, that's a pretty bad situation to be in, I guess. But the ideal situation is building something that's kind of in between. I think something that I want to shoot, I can have fun with long range, and I can also kill an antelope, deer, elk, moose with, and know it inside and out. I mean, how I put it to you, I think in the past was, I want to be the Bob Lee swagger of at least one or two guns in my gun safe, and not just have, some guns I like to play with, but actually know it front to back. So
yeah. So it sounds like basically you want not a run of the mill, but a high quality rifle that you can use in the scenarios you're looking to use it in, but is also shootable. So you're enjoying practice with it, and you do practice with it so that you become more than proficient, but really
yeah. Good. And I want something that is, I mean, I don't want to have to reload to get the ammo. I want to reload, but I don't want to have to reload. So to find something that's a good option that is good enough for moose, elk, caribou, mule deer, whitetail, and antelope, if I really wanted to shoot an antelope with it. And my antelope, they're deader than a doornail with my 6 arc, so I think that's a good round too. But having something that's versatile, that doesn't punish your shoulder, and you can stay on target, see your impact, and that is in between ultra lightweight and just a solid gun to help manage the recoil, I think is kind of where I'm landing at. Right in that 7-pound range, 6.5 to 7-pound range, I think is a good place before the scope and bipod and mag and everything.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot to be in. Obviously, you can go lighter, but that can really beat up your shoulder if you go too light on a big cartridge, and too heavy. No one wants to carry that around. I mean, I know guys that don't like carrying big heavy rifles to their deer stands in Nebraska, and you've got a 200-yard walk. So
yeah.
And you said moose, elk, stuff like that. I think that automatically puts you in the 7mm and above caliber category.
I think so
There's
too.
a ton of options out there, but
so up until this last year, name those options. I started out with a 308, and then so I had a 308 in high school, and then I got a 300 Win Mag when I came to Wyoming, and a 6.5 Creedmoor and an ARC. But for the most part, I've never had a 7, never really considered a 7. What are some of the common 7s that I was considering up until October 26th of last year?
I mean, the most common is going to be the 7mm Remington Magnum, akin to your 300 Win Mag, but 7mm. You've got 7 Ultra Mag, I think, which I think those Ultra Mags are pretty ridiculous, and they don't meet your criteria of being something that you're gonna want to or enjoy shooting at the range. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not that well versed on 7s either. Those are probably the biggest, most popular ones that I am aware of. There's a 7mm 08, which is a neck down 308, which is a little, I mean, that's smaller than what you're looking for. You're wanting a long action cartridge for big game.
Yeah.
Not that a 708 can't do that, but if I'm going to Alaska to shoot a moose, I don't think I'm going to take a 708 when I could take something bigger.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, recently, we'll say relatively recently, Hornady released their 7 PRC, which is 7mm based on the 375 Ruger case. So it is, it's a little different than anything else that's out there, I would say, in terms of 7mm.
Yep.
And it's on the shelf.
It is, actually. I'll be right back.
Andrew's notorious for buying ammo before he even has a gun in that caliber, which I guess is maybe a way of manifesting.
Yeah. So once I saw the box ammo, I had to buy a couple boxes. I figured I'm gonna buy a gun anyways. Might as well get the ammo while it's on the shelf. So I am gonna build a 7 PRC. Actually, that's what I'm building my HS precision rifle in. But I've also decided I'm gonna build Rusty Nuts chassis and convert my 300 mag into a 7mm PRC. And probably gonna go with a custom pre-fit barrel. I'm trying to figure out what company to go with, but here's this cartridge. And for comparison, it's just right in between a 6.5 PRC and a 300 PRC. And it's kind of that sweet spot is what I've understood. I've never shot it, but it has that potential to back off on some recoil from my 300, but also add quite a bit of performance downrange. So
yeah,
we'll get into what.
I think I would.
Go ahead.
I would call it an efficient cartridge. It's big. It's not as big as the 300 PRC. It's probably going to recoil less than the 300 Win Mag, but thanks to physics, it's going to outperform the 300 Win Mag.
Yeah,
pretty quick. Maybe not at the end of the barrel, but you're not building a long action Magnum to shoot 100, 200 yards typically. You're typically building for a little bit further shots on bigger game.
Well, and I think what I've spent a lot of my free time to kind of get away from the business, get away from life, and while I'm sitting around with no ability to walk, I've been watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, driving back and forth on this new round. And it's easy to buy all the hype, but you can't argue with the science of it. So, and what I mean by that is the BCs of these bullets. This is designed, the casing in the cartridge itself is designed around the high BC bullet. They want the bullet to do the work. And
when you say high BC, BC means ballistic coefficient, correct?
Yeah, which is, you understand that probably better than I do, but the BC on this, the G1 BC is 0.689. That's crazy high.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
So just, it's pretty high. Up into the 7s is high, I would say.
I think their ELD matches in the 7s.
Yeah, so just a quick explanation on ballistic coefficient, which we will be calling BC from here on out. BC is basically a number to describe a bullet's or a body's ability to overcome air resistance in flight. So the higher the number, the more it is going to overcome air resistance. It is inversely proportional to negative acceleration, if that makes sense. So the higher BC you have, the less negative acceleration you're going to have. Basically, long, slender bullets that are heavy for their caliber is how you get a high BC bullet.
Yep. And so what you get is maybe where the Weatherby comes out blazing hot down the strip, you're getting with the high BC bullet, the sustainability of that. So you may not be the fastest out of the muzzle, but past 300 yards, everybody else is their gap is losing quick. And so I'm kind of, it shoots 175 grain ELDX bullet, 3,000 feet per second out of a 24-inch barrel. I'm going to probably build mine in a 22-inch barrel just since I have a suppressor. But so just for comparable, my 300 Win Mag currently with the ammo I'm shooting is a 200 grain bullet. It's going to have similar velocity out the barrel and higher energy, but at 300 yards, it's already outmatched by this 7mm PRC. So at 300 yards, foot-pounds of energy is 2368 in the Win Mag and 2507 in the 7mm PRC, which it took me a while to wrap my head around that even though the bullet is heavier and a thicker caliber, 300 caliber versus 7mm, you actually have more energy in the 7mm. And it's just shocking to me. But then that gap even widens. So a lot of people will say you want 1,500 foot-pounds of energy to be ethically kill an elk. And this 7mm PRC has over 1,500 foot-pounds of energy at 800 yards. And my 300 Win Mag is at 625 yards is 1,500 pounds of energy. So, I mean, you're getting, granted, I'm not planning on shooting an elk at 800 yards, but pretty much every yard after 292 yards, this 7 PRC is outdoing a larger caliber bullet, and it's going to have less recoil.
Yeah, and under 300 yards, negligible difference. I mean,
and the difference wouldn't be meaningful either. It's negligible, but it's not meaningful. Both will have adequate amount of energy. Both will have adequate amount of everything you need to take something. So I'm not worried about my placement inside 300. I'm not worried about energy with either cartridge inside 300, but I would be worried about seeing my impact.
Yeah. And so, right, I did pull up, I have a little chart I made a little while back when we talked about this that compares the 300 to the 7 at different yardages, and I have some numbers highlighted here just as another, reference for people. A lot of times people will say, manufacturers, those Hornady bullets in particular, I think they're rated to open up and expand, perform how they're intended to perform, down to around 1,800 feet per second. With the 300 Win Mag, you're looking 750 yards or so to where the bullet will still perform. And with the 7 PRC, you're looking at 950 to almost 1,000 yards, where that bullet is still going to expand. And I don't, advocate people necessarily taking game at that distance unless you're very confident in your ability to. But the bullet, the caliber, the cartridge is capable of that, and probably further, to be honest. But that's just 1,800 feet per second is a kind of a standard benchmark for these.
Yeah, no, that's good insight too. And I think I've settled on the 7 PRC for my HS Precision build. I kind of decided I'm going to go all in on this cartridge. I'm going to get this rifle built. I unfortunately may not be done in time to even practice with it before rifle season. So my backup plan is to build a Rusty Nuts Designs chassis with a Tikka action and a Tikka prefit barrel. Get it to be something that I can shoot with this summer, and I'm going to run the same scope on both guns. So I'm going to be able to, hopefully in the same length barrel, same scope, have pretty similar performance, even though it'll be slightly different setups. It should be, fairly close to the same as far as performance, and it should be a familiar setup. With your chassis, I'm looking forward to that collapsible folding stock. I mean, so might be even easier to take in the backcountry than my other rifle, but that's kind of where I'm at. And the other thing is you'd have to make a little modification with your current chassis that you're designing, I think, but just a minor modification will allow me to get this 7PRC going. Is that right?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things Tika does, from everything I've read and understand, is their action is basically one length, and all of their cartridges use it. They just add different stops for short action versus long action. So my current chassis, all I should have to do basically is change the mag well opening so that it's compatible with AICS mags, which AICS mags is there's different standards for magazines. AICS is one of them. Similar to an AR-15, how there's a standard pattern. The AR-15 mag has to be this pattern. Ton of manufacturers for it. You have polymer ones, steel ones, aluminum ones. It's a standard to go by. So every mag well for every AR-15 accepts these. This is similar to bolt action. There's a few different options for bolt action. One of them is AICS, which I think is probably the best option from my limited experience, and that's what my chassis will be made for long action, is AICS mags. So yeah, I'll just need to make a design revision for the AICS mag so that they fit in the mag well, and then potentially a new mag catch lever. Initially going to be rolling out the chassis for Tika CTR mags, which is only Tika makes those, but they're very high quality short action mags, but they don't have long action. And so depending on where the mag catch on the magazine is, I might have to make a different lever just so that it sits in the right spot so that it feeds properly every time.
Perfect.
But those are fairly small changes, in my opinion.
Pretty doable. Well,
I think so.
I think I'm going to have to build a 308 short action as well, mostly because you've already built one for your 6.5 Creedmoor, which I will say is an advanced cartridge compared to the 308, but I just, something about the 308 I like as my first rifle. It's kind of an oldie but a goodie. It's a good general gun. I've got lots of ammo for it, lots of brass, bullets, and everything I need, and it can still be a great deer cartridge. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've taken elk with it.
Yep, so I've taken an elk with it.
The 308's no slouch.
No.
Just like you said, it's an older design.
But it stood the test of time too. Unfortunately there's some new high BC bullets coming out that are impressive, and for longer range, I don't think people look at the 308 as the ideal sniper rifle anymore. For good reason, but doesn't mean you still can't. It doesn't mean you still can't put a nice shot on target, and you're not going to blow through barrels as fast as a lot of these other new ones too. So.
No, and you have a 308 already. You have 308 ammo. You're set up, ready to go. That's half the battle, is having the ammo or the components to reload if you're going to do that. And another perk to 308 is it's so common that a lot of times it ends up being cheaper than some other stuff, which can mean more practice, which means better shooting, which means more ethical kills.
Yeah. And it's still a NATO round, so got that going for me, which is nice.
Yeah.
So I think I got some work for you to do anyways. I might claim a couple of those chassis and get set up. I'm excited. I obviously my brother, and I just want to see you succeed, but I'm also really excited about the product. I am. I mean, it's hard to not be excited about it, and I'll maybe work my way into being a sales rep for you at some point. But right now I'm just excited to buy one and get set up. And I think the 308 will be my first choice for now. And then as soon as the PRC can be done, we'll get that 7 PRC going. And I may end up using that to take a Caribou in 2024.
That would be cool. So just to sort of wrap it up on the build, you want to use the Rusty Nuts Designs chassis, which, as we talked about previously, it's a versatile system. So it's not too heavy for hunting. It's not too light for shooting matches. It allows, a lot of adaptability to run it how you want to run it, depending on the scenario you're in. We covered the caliber, 7mm PRC, action, Tikka action, magazines, AICS mags. What about barrel? Have you made I know you said 22-inch barrel, but are you set on a carbon fiber barrel? I know weight is important to you for this build.
Yeah, I think I want to try to cut weight where I can, but still get that high performance. And so the carbon fiber barrels people are making, I think, are pretty awesome. I mean, you get that stiffness and rigidity even beyond a bull barrel, and not without the weight. And they cool quick. So I think that's the way I want to go. The only reason I wouldn't is the price. I don't know. Not that that's a huge deterrent, because I want to make sure this is a gun I'm going to keep for a long time. But part of it is the price, and part of it's the look. I think having a stainless steel action, it might be cool to have a stainless steel barrel too. But I think I'm leaning towards carbon fiber.
You can shave some weight with a fluted barrel, depending on how many flutes and how deep and whatnot. And you can, it's not going to be as rigid likely, but that doesn't mean it's going to be less accurate. A high quality barrel builder, can build a high quality barrel no matter what, essentially. So
where would you send me to look for barrels?
Man, there's so many different options out there these days. If you're looking for carbon fiber, Proof is obviously probably sort of towards the top of the list. I'll say all of these are probably going to have a fairly long lead time because they are custom. But I would say Proof, Carbon 6 LLC. I think Bartlein has carbon fiber wrapped barrels. I think Preferred barrels.
Preferred barrel blanks.
There's a whole bunch of options, and I think it's going to be hard to go wrong with one of those. And pretty much any of those except for, Carbon 6, I think, is also going to be able to do a stainless barrel with flutes. I think Excalibur Barrels is another one that does both. It comes down to how much you want to spend, and when you really look at it, by the time you add fluting, which adds more machine time and handling and whatnot, you get within a stone's throw of the price of a carbon fiber barrel. I mean, maybe a couple $100.
Yeah.
So
I think the $700 to $850 range for a good carbon fiber barrel is what I'm looking at. I think Proof's pushing almost $1,000.
Yeah, they're usually $9 or above.
Yeah.
But that, there's other options that are great.
Yeah.
So
as long as it's made in America.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it probably is safe to say that another reason you like the 7 PRC is it's going to be compatible, usable with all of your Thunder Beast cans. Yeah.
Yep.
Versus, I know at one point you talked about like a 338 type build,
Yeah.
which would be cool, but that would require a new suppressor if you wanted to suppress. And 338 cans they're not cheap and they're not light. typically.
Yeah.
I think there's a few companies out there. I think I want to say Diligent Defense. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're fairly new, but I think they're coming out with a light 338 can for hunting, but it's still, I mean, it's big. So
Yeah,
I think the 7 PRC is a good choice.
I think I'm pretty confident about that. And today was kind of one of those days I'm like, you know what? Not going to overthink it anymore. I'm going to commit to this, learn as much as I can about it. And if it fails me, I doubt it will. But if it does, I can make a change again. But, and I've considered that the 338 RPM from Weatherby, because they have a 5.5 pound rifle shooting a 338 caliber 225 grain bullet. It's
And
really backcountry to the max, and so that kind of fits the bill too. But I don't want to have to buy another suppressor. So
Weatherby builds some incredible rifles.
So. Oh yeah, and they're really stepping up their game with having a carbon fiber stock, ultra lightweight everything, and getting that accuracy guarantee still. So hard to argue with them, but I think Hornady's also on top of their game with. If I build a gun around their bullet is basically what's happening. An ELDX high BC bullet, they built the new cartridge for it, and now all these manufacturers are going to be able to make barrels and guns for this. It's cool seeing science just push stuff forward anyways.
It really is.
And Hornady's a Nebraska company. We grew up close to them. And Weatherby's, an hour and 15 minutes from my house. So just kind of fun that those are kind of the two big leaders in the field that we're considering anyways. But I'm excited. I'm excited to get things rocking and rolling. I'm probably going to have to settle on a barrel here soon, so you can help me put it together when I'm in Lincoln over the spring game.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of the spring game, I got a little jazzed up about Husker football this weekend, talking to some people about Dylan Raiola. You got any good news for me? Is he committed yet?
Yeah. No. Sorry, I shouldn't have said yeah. He's not committed yet. It may seem like it at this point. He was seen in Lincoln at a basketball game this weekend, sitting next to his dad and his brother watching the men's basketball game, and the student section started chanting, "Dylan, Dylan, Dylan." So he stood up and threw the bones, which we all know is the sign of just like, let's go, and showed ultimate respect to the fans. And I think, it wasn't an official visit. He came on his own dime. He came up to spend time with his uncle, let's say. And the fans are going to recruit him. Yeah, they have to. The Georgia fans aren't going to notice that. They're just, it's another 5-star from, wherever the kid's at. They could have 5 of them walk through and a lot of fans aren't going to notice, but we called him out. He stood up, threw the bones, and enjoyed it. Pretty awesome. And the whole crowd, I guess, was clapping for him. And there's no rules against spending your own money to go to a basketball game, let alone with your uncle and your dad. So there's a lot of positives, and it gets you excited. It does. I think I was talking to you earlier today. We have him, who's currently the number 1 recruit in the country. A number 2 recruit in the country is voiced interest in Nebraska because of him. And then we have, then we have the number 3 recruit in the country in Kansas City area, and he's interested in Nebraska as well. And there's potential that all 3 of them will be there for the spring game, which would be an incredible recruiting weekend. I can't imagine. When you get talent, you bring more talent. It's just that's what Alabama's done. That's what everybody who wins is doing, and it's hard to not want to be around greatness. So I think we're in a good spot.
One of the big things I think, other than if we could land Raiola being a 5-star quarterback, obviously he could be a game changer for us. But just peer recruiting, like we mentioned earlier, other really good players saying, "Hey, this guy, he put his trust in their program, so why shouldn't I be able to do that?" So I think drinking the Roulade, but I'm pretty pumped.
He's showing up to the games too. I mean, Rule's showing up to the games. Yeah. He's being a part of the community. He's setting up a culture to where I think there's some sort of a point system for players that they'll get more points throughout the off season. I don't know what points convert to, but something in the program if they show up to other sporting events. So if they're seen at a volleyball game, at a basketball game, at track, tennis, swimming, bowling, any of those events, they get points, and so you're seeing more of a presence online and in person with these players, and I think it's good. I don't think that the previous coach we had, I barely want to talk about him, but he was too cool for school, didn't want to be in public, and Matt Rule's embracing it. He's just like, I want to enjoy my life with my family too, so it's cool.
It's really exciting. I know a lot of people around here are pretty excited about it. I know I'm excited about it, and I keep getting more excited. So,
heck yeah. Yeah, I think we're in a good position, like I said, and the 2024 recruiting rankings, the new ones, updated ones, will come out here in the next, maybe this week, but in the next few days, for sure. And we'll see if there's any change in who's the number one recruit, and where people go. There's also a kid from Ainsworth, Nebraska, who Alabama offered last week. He's an 8-man football player, tight end / quarterback / DN / linebacker / safety, because you do everything in 8-man. But the thing is he had a 7-foot high jump.
Wow. Yeah.
You don't argue with numbers. Kind of like our bullets. The new cartridge, you can't argue with the facts of the matter that there's more speed and more energy downrange with the 7 PRC than a lot of the other cartridges out there. You're not going to find a guy that can high jump 7 foot, pole vault 13.5, and throw a discus 175 feet and want to play football for you. So Nick Saban made an offer to this guy at Ainsworth, Nebraska, and this guy's climbing. So it's interesting seeing that. I think Nebraska isn't in, it's not a shoo-in that he's going to come to Nebraska. You got every school in the country wanting this kid, same as Dylan Raiola for that matter. But it's cool if we can lock down the quarterback. Maybe the tight end comes with it. Maybe the best receiver comes with it. Maybe the running back wants to support the passing game. Maybe we finally get that, hey, we're going to turn this around and make Nebraska, one of those top 4 teams, which is kind of hard to think about. But, man, I think the fan base would absolutely be there. So it already is. Definitely. I mean, we're always there regardless. Even on a 3-win season, we're there cheering. So, Yep, that's the Husker football update. It gets more and more real. I mean, seeing them in Lincoln, seeing the social media blow up with it, and I think, you can't complain at this point if you're a Husker fan. But
not at all. Not at all.
Well, that brings us kind of to our last thing we usually do, which is the most interesting thing you've learned today or in the last week. Let's hear it.
I did, so we did the podcast last week with Hunter, did a lot of archery talk, was reading some archery stuff and brought me across a link to an article that talked about how it's kind of believed now from things they've found that archery is what separated, or I guess gave humans the leg up on Neanderthals. So, while we had figured archery out, they were still throwing spears, and man, that's a game changer. So, I thought that was pretty interesting. It's not really anything I had ever thought about. I don't know why I would have thought about it, but yeah, pretty interesting. What about you?
I had a patient in Sundance who was, we were actually talking about rifles and cartridges and stuff, and his favorite rifle is something that I'd never heard of before, but nonetheless, he was telling me about when he first moved to Wyoming, and he'd shoot beavers on creeks this time of year, and a little bit later in the year, and the water would be running and in the creeks quite a bit with the snow melting and whatnot. But he said that if you shoot a beaver, they'll sink and they'll run down the river underwater, never find them again. Maybe it's stuck on a log or a rock or something. So in order to prevent that, you shoot them in the nose, they go to the bank to try to not drown, and then you shoot them when they go to the bank. And I never heard that before, but it sounds a little bit like torture, but it also,
that's how people made their livelihood.
Exactly. So the thinking process was, okay, I got to hit this nose. I got to hit the mouth portion, the very front end. Everyone knows what a nose is. I don't have to explain that. But yeah, you make it hard for them to breathe, and you don't kill them, so they fill their lungs up with air, but they're struggling to go to the bank to catch their breath, and then you finish them there. And he said it worked every time, and I just thought that was really interesting how clever that was.
Yeah, very clever, and another one of those things that I would never know, never would have guessed. Cool.
Yeah, the only creek hunting and harvesting we ever did was jumping across the creek with spears at the Montgomerys.
That was a blast. That was a lot of fun.
I can only imagine how bad we smelled, but it was something you can't forget.
No. Well.
Cool.
Glad we got your build sort of figured out here finally. Hopefully it doesn't change anytime soon.
No, I'm going all in. I'm excited about it, and hopefully we'll get a barrel ordered before the next week and get something in the works. We can start talking about how that's all coming along.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as always, thanks for joining us, people, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week.
Later, bro.
Later.